Welcome back to Two Gents, Two Cents. This is episode 22, talking about the great transfer of wealth coming up in the next 2 decades. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we're going to talk about something that is a major topic at the forefront of the investing and personal finance world. It's a huge consideration for anyone for our industry, and it should be more of a consideration to you out there listening. It probably isn't as much of a consideration as it should be. So let's just get into it. The current situation of the average age of the oldest generation, the amount of wealth they've accumulated, and therefore the impending transfer of wealth is set to be one of the greatest or the greatest of all time. Colloquially, it's being referred to kind of in the industry as the great wealth transfer, and that's the baby boomers and the silent generation now passing on within these next 20 years to the millennial and younger generations. So, James, what does that mean at a big picture level? Kind of what's your overall take before we get into statistics on what this means for individuals and the market at large?
So before I answer this, can you tell me what colloquially means?
Yeah, so colloquialism is means like a cultural reference, like a expression within a certain subculture. So in this case, it's a colloquialism of like the financial world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that word. I've never seen it used in Scrabble, but I've heard the word.
I don't think you can have enough letters to spell it in Scrabble.
That might win the whole game right there. That might be it. But yeah, we have. I mean, unequivocally, the biggest wealth transfer ever.
Can you tell me what unequivocally means?
Yeah, unequivocally, it is James's. I mean, there's just going to be so much money, right? This is the baby boomer generation that's going to be passing on all of their net worth, and they have more money than any other generation before them.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could say, oh, well, there's more people on Earth, we have technology, et cetera. It makes sense, but really, that baby boomer generation just did such a great job saving. They really did such a great job. They're also the generation, though, and a little bit of the predecessors before them, but they're also the generation that got rid of their 401ks in 2008. So they would have even more money if they wouldn't have made such a rash emergency decision back then to sell. But I mean, it's going to be trillions and trillions of dollars. I think it's at least 3. I didn't look up the number, but
that's so funny. When I get into these statistics, that is so funny.
Oh, is it so much more?
Oh, it's so much more.
Okay. I knew it was trillions. I wasn't sure how many. And I'm glad I erred on the side of safety there. But yeah, what it means is millennials, who will be essentially the inheritors of that money, were some of the worst savers as far as generations are concerned. So it's a huge consideration is how is that money going to be spent, saved, invested? Where is it going to go? You have tax considerations out of that, right? You have the inheritance tax. There's a whole bunch of things that we kind of have to consider as you and me are millennials. Those are big things, and we have actually already had clients who've their parents unfortunately have passed and they inherited money. Hey, what do we do with this, James and Brandon?
Yeah,
and that's been like top of mind for us recently.
Yeah, and I would say too, before we'll get into kind of the specifics, but just to kind of briefly touch on, since James talked about who we meet with, both sides of the coin can benefit from a financial advisor. So there's clients that we've met with who their consideration is, I'm going to leave wealth, how best to structure this. There's lots of considerations there. And then there's also the people who inherit the wealth. And then there's that conversation of, okay, how do I responsibly manage this now? So there's planning on both sides of that equation that can benefit from good financial advice, as long as you're getting good financial advice. So, okay, let's talk a little bit now about the statistics specifically of this generation, this wealth transfer. That's specifically what's estimated to be the next 2 decades. So that's kind of what's referred to as the great wealth transfer, is over the next 2 decades is kind of when the baby boomer generation will mostly be deceased at that point, pretty much.
Because they're like 60 years old or something right now, right? So,
in 60s, I think.
Yeah, 60s, so 80s and 90s.
Late 80s by the time we're 20 years down the road, The youngest of them will be
Before
late 80s.
You go into this, did you ever see Austin Powers?
I didn't.
Dang it. Okay, so all of you listening, I know you guys have seen Austin Powers, some of you. There's a scene where Dr. Evil goes back in time and he holds the world hostage, and he asks for $1 million. Or he goes into the future and asks for $1 million. And they all laugh at him because they're like, we could get that for you within this room. But he thought he was like in 1930 asking for $1 million. Anyways, that was me with the $2 trillion. So go ahead.
So in the future that Austin Powers visits,
Yes.
so the estimate is that in the next 20 years, $84.4 trillion in assets
I Dr. Evil that.
will be transferred from baby boomers and the silent generation to younger generations. So it is a staggering amount of money, and that's why this specific time period is referred to as the Great Wealth Transfer. It's two generations that had a couple things. They came out of economic issues, so they were frugal. They were the owners of assets during a period of incredible home and real estate appreciation. So anybody who's talked to their parents or grandparents who own property has heard the story of, oh yeah, I bought this house for $30,000 and it's, $1.5 million. So they're the generation who has all of those homes and real estate. So that's a big reason the amount is so high. So there's both cultural and economic factors that have kind of contributed to there being so much money right now. So let's talk about kind of why this is so impactful. So I've pulled up a couple different sources and articles here, and I'm just going to talk about a couple key points here. Only a quarter of people have discussed generational wealth transfer with their families. 35%, so a little bit more, of Americans say they don't plan on discussing the transfer of wealth with their families. So that's a massive issue. And so let's talk, I've got one more statistic here in terms of inheritances in general. So this is from the Soto Law Group, a thing they studied interviewing thousands of people. Many people spend their inheritance quickly. A study by MarketWatch found that 1/3 of people who received an inheritance had negative savings within 2 years. The Soto Law Group says that people usually spend their inheritance in a year or less. So there's a couple troubling factors of this. And there's a million different things we could quote. You're welcome to look it up, and I'm sure we've done a lot of these statistics in past episodes, is the overall financial literacy of individuals. How many people know what a 401k is? How many people currently have a financial advisor or even self-manage an account? How many people currently have a retirement account? So there's a couple kind of colliding factors and consequences. It's the most wealth ever transferred in the United States. 2 generations that do not have comprehensive financial literacy skills being given by a generation with subpar communication skills communicate how this wealth should be fairly divided. So that creates, in every way, just so much complexity and potential for enormous wealth and success, but the potential for the largest squandering of wealth we've ever seen, right? So, James, let's start with the people inheriting. So for potential inheritors, kind of what are the first things that you kind of is advice when you meet with clients that inherited money, you're talking to someone who's potentially inheriting money, what's the first thing or two that you kind of go over that puts them above their peers if they follow this advice?
Yeah, the first thing I do is I try to, one, you want to be like, okay, someone clearly important enough, they were important enough to somebody who just died that they're giving them money. So that's the first thing, is it's like, okay, this isn't just cash that randomly landed in their lap. There's at least some sort of emotional connection. So you have to attach that to the money. So with that, I try to always play on the human emotional side of stuff. So like Brandon and I had a mutual client. It was back when we weren't working together, but it was referred to me from him. It was three daughters who inherited money, and they decided they weren't going to spend any of it, right? They were just going to invest it. There was quite a bit, and they decided they were just going to invest it for a little bit. And recently they've taken some money out and done some things with it, but that has significantly grown. So what I would say is the exact same thing I told them. I said, hey, look, a lot of this is spent within, Brandon had mentioned 12 months. The numbers we used 5 years ago was 18 months. inheritances go to zero, I tell them to spend 10% of it. Just at least get that emotion, or human nature, I guess you would call it. Get that bug out of your system.
It's like the purge for inheritances.
A little bit. Yeah. It's like you need to just spend this now. And that way you can have a defense wall in your mind. Like, I already spent this money. Like, I spent this money and I can't touch it now. And if you do that, if you're able to do that, you're essentially placing a future value on that current cash, which is more than what it's worth. And it'll always be more valuable to you later. And so if you spend that 10%, it's way worth it to get out that itch, scratch, whatever you want to call it. That's the first thing I tell people. And then the second thing I tell them is you need to look at this like this is your get out of jail free card, right? Millennials, we don't have great savings habits. This right here could separate you. Like you could be. So another example is we have another client who came on board, mid-30s, has roughly $1 million. Okay, very conservative. If he's conservative, we're talking treasury rates, so guaranteed rates less than 5%, 4%. I mean, he could have $5-10 million by the time he's 65. It's insane amounts of okay, you're going to have a huge spending issue if you just do it the right way. So it's just trying to give the first thing is play on the human nature, and second is give them a visual of the future value. Right. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's obviously the more you understand the potential, the hopefully less likely you are to make bad financial decisions. 100%. The 10% advice is great. I've experienced that. My wife and their family. My wife's grandmother passed away. The grandfather had already passed, so that was kind of the last stop of the generation. So at that point, there was an inheritance. They used some of that money. The whole family went to Italy, which is where they're from. So that was that level of we're going to enjoy this. We're going to remember our family member who passed. We're going to enjoy this time together. It gives you an emotional attachment, and it does somewhat get out of your system. Okay, we traveled the world with this money. Let's not go back and then go out to eat at Chili's too many times with the money. Kind of puts in perspective of what you can do with money when you actually use it well to have fun rather than just blowing it day by day and then 3 years down the road, $100,000 gone. And
where'd it go?
You didn't really increase your life. You just spent a little too much. Yeah. So here's a study that I thought had a couple very interesting points. This is from Citizens Bank, and there's a couple statistics here that are kind of, some are interesting and some are very sad. So they found that 72% of Americans don't feel confident in their ability to manage a financial windfall. They also report being unsure where to turn for financial advice they can trust. And almost a third of Americans who experienced a financial windfall in the past were burned by bad financial advice, they feel.
Yeah.
Then this says for younger Americans are more likely to turn to social media than a professional for financial advice.
Really?
What would you say to that, James?
I would say that we're in the wrong business then. We need to just get on the gram, the tickety talk, and just, man, that's that many?
Yeah.
I would say
more than 50%. It didn't give a specific number, but it said more likely to. And I can attest to this. I have a lot of clients who will send me stuff on social media.
That's true. You do have that.
Now, sometimes it's fine advice. There are plenty of good internet personalities that they're good at their job and social media opens up, and so they explore that avenue, and they're completely legitimate. But there's also an incredible amount of fraudulent advice because of how accessible that space is, just to propagate knowledge, whether it's true or not, out there.
All about those clicks.
All about those clicks.
The popular stuff.
Yeah, so you're going to get a lot of a bad hot take advice because nobody wants to click on the person who says they're going to earn 4%. They want to click on the link that says they're going to earn millions, and even if it's very bad advice.
You know what I would say to that is I think of the most recent client that we had in this situation, the gentleman in his 30s who had it's a little bit under $1 million. He immediately put it into CDs, right? Like the safest thing. He's like, okay, I just want to protect this, right? Which is not the most common millennial behavior to do. He's a little bit of a unique situation, trying to treasure what his parents left him. But it wouldn't take longer in my head than 15 minutes to what are some wise investment choices for inheritance. I mean, you could literally just Google that. You could ChatGPT that, and there would be, I'm sure it would say this is not financial advice, but you'd get something that's better than whoever the social media Dave Ramsey. I don't know. Yeah. That hurts my heart a little bit that people are 50% of people do that.
And, I mean, we've talked about this. We've had multiple episodes on kind of what does it look like to work with someone who's not a fiduciary? What are the different types of advisors, and what are the pitfalls and incentive structures that can be perverse for those people? So trust me, you're preaching to the choir here about our own industry. We are well aware of the issues. We are surrounded by a lot of people who do shady things or just are not on top of things. They're just negligent. There's more negligent than harmful, but both are bad for your money. And there are also harmful people out there who do very unethical things with people's money. So all that to say, there are absolutely a lot of ways you can go wrong, but an actual professional who is an investment advisor, who is a fiduciary, we've talked about that in a billion of our episodes. If you work with a professional, if you're in the situation where you expect an inheritance, you're someone who wants to do a good job leaving an inheritance, you're someone who's already received an inheritance or is planning on it, talk to a financial advisor who is a fiduciary. And that means that they are ethically and legally bound to do what's best for you. So they can't sell you a commission product that's bad for you. They have to meet the standard of this is the best investment choice for you.
This is the truth, though, the ultimate truth. If I met with 5 doctors, it's very unlikely I'm going to pick the smartest one. I'm probably going to pick the nicest one. Something along those lines. And your money is kind of the same thing, right? Like you want someone with this excellent attitude, upbeat, exciting, and they're salesmen. Okay, to find the best doctor, you kind of have to have a little bit of knowledge. And again, it doesn't take more than 15, 20 minutes would be my take on it, where you're like, okay, this guy's trying to sell me something bad, or this guy's got bad advice. You know, I mean, there were people telling you to put, there was a guy, I read this I saw this video the other day, a guy from 2009 who was like, please just put $1 into Bitcoin. In 2009. Yeah. That's phenomenal financial advice right now, but back then it was like, that's the stupidest, like, why would I ever waste $1? Like, so you don't really know what people are talking about. And this guy now, I mean, he's living his best life, trillionaire, whatever, you know, on a yacht somewhere in Italy. But it's just like, that goes to show, like, you don't really know.
Yeah.
And when you guys are speaking with financial advisors or even trying to do it yourself, I know we're on social media, but we're also trying to like push meeting with us. You guys need to meet and do your own research with people. Like, that's the biggest thing. Especially if you're a millennial, you're probably not doing your own investment picking, you're hiring someone. So when that happens, you need to take the time and don't just pick the nicest person. That would be my number one advice. If you're not going to use us. Right.
And yeah, I would say anybody who, so you follow, and we've talked about this, so we'll be very quick in our recap because we had an entire episode of how to pick a good advisor and a whole episode about why social media is a bad environment for good financial advice. We've had entire episodes about both of those different topics. But trace the actual credentials of the person, so look them up both on their page and independently. If they're giving tax advice, are they a CPA or even an EA, an enrolled agent with the IRS? If they're giving financial advice, are they an RIA? Do they work for a broker dealer?
Broker check. That's where you want to go.
There you go. Brokercheck.com. .org.
Yeah, okay. It says org out here.
Brokercheck.org. Look up the person. Are they there? Are they an actual advisor, or is this just someone on social media? So look at credentials and then follow the trail of where they get paid. So we're very upfront. We get paid if we get a client. That's it. We hope we're good at our job. We meet with clients. Usually people enjoy working with us. We try to do a good job. It's that simple. We don't make money from people watching our podcast. There's no ad spots in our podcast. So there's no incentive to clickbait and get artificial listeners. It doesn't help us if they're not someone who might be a client. We do this to share information. If someone's social media path you follow is buy my course, go to my class, sign up for my conference, then you know right off the bat there's a very perverse incentive structure here in terms of how they're getting listeners and what their incentive is. We don't want 10,000 listeners who are vaguely interested in financial advice. We want 25 listeners who were all greatly benefited by the advice we gave and learned something, right? So follow the incentive structure if you're getting your advice from social media.
There's two reasons we do this. One is to get clients. Obviously, we're running a business, but then I would say the most important thing that we're doing this for is so you don't go with someone who's going to rip you off.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. That's part of the reason why I love what I do, is because I know that it's like the difference between giving someone poison and giving someone the medicine. It's like, I know what all the poisons are.
Yeah.
So if we can avoid you taking the poison, that's what we want.
I would go so far as to say, and this might be a bad thing to say on our podcast, but what we want to accomplish with this is not doing the podcast every week. I know that sounds terrible because that's literally what we do, is try to do the episodes every week. But what I mean by that is, it's the only way to eventually set up a database of credibility and information so that when we get an email that says, hey, I have a friend, I've really enjoyed working with you, they are going to get this inheritance and they had a question about the tax rules on a home they inherited. Now I can go, yep, I have a tax plan episode on this. It's called The Tax Plan, Inheriting Real Estate and What Your Options Are. Go listen to this. It has great advice. That's the goal. So you can't get there overnight. We have to do this weekly, and hopefully it's continually helpful to people. But really the goal is that in 2 years, the benefit is the podcast we've already recorded, not necessarily that we're going to get 10,000 listeners on the next one and get ad revenue. It's that we have then a database where at some point in the future, we've covered everything. And now, in any given conversation, we or you can go, hey, I follow these guys. Listen to this advice. I don't think you want to work with that type of product. I don't think you should sell your real estate that way. I remember hearing this guy talk about how you could save more money by doing a 1031 exchange or whatever the issue is. The goal is to build a database of information and credibility to avoid people following into these pitfalls and traps of the industry.
And that's a good point, I think, because I mean, friends and friends talk to each other, right? Like-minded, like people, they communicate, right? If you're a fireman, you talk with other firemen. But you're not talking with your kids. Like, we'll eventually get to the inheritee. It's the inheritee.
Inheritee, yeah.
Yeah, that would be correct. I mean, look, it's weird to talk about money that you're giving away, but the average inheritance, and this is like between 2001 and 2019, it's like $12,000. Okay. And what it really is it's closer to zero, because it's either you're getting a bunch of money or you're not really getting anything. It's usually one of those. And so it finds this middle ground somewhere in the 10,000s. But you guys got to talk about stuff. Obviously, you don't want to be telling your delinquent teenager or nephew, whoever is your beneficiary who's young and making bad choices right now, you don't have a conversation with them, but you do want to keep people in the loop because you want to start educating now. There's a lot of power in pressure, meaning like if my dad comes to me and is like, I want X, Y, and Z done with money whenever I pass, there is probably no shot that I'm going to just say, F that. I'm going to go do whatever I want. So just want to encourage you guys, if you're willing to talk to your friends about stuff, you got to be able to talk about who you're willing to give money to. I know it's weird, but it's the only way to ensure that, or not even ensure, but it provides another level of assurance that they're going to be guilted. I don't even know what the word would be. They're going to have pressure from you to do the right thing with the money.
Yeah, and I would say too, like it's a major, even if, but also if you do, but even if you don't talk to them about it, having a relationship with a good advisor that you have a relationship with that you trust, that makes that process a lot easier, because now when we have a client, they've already talked about us. My number one goal is leaving as large of a nest egg as possible for my kids. Well, when the day comes when they unfortunately pass, we're the third, fourth call of that person, hey, I'm so sorry what happened. I want to introduce myself. I've been managing blah, blah, blah's money. This is kind of the wealth statement. I'd love to talk to you about what you want to accomplish with this. I just wanted to touch base, anything I could help with, and now they already have someone who can work with them on that money, and they aren't in that boat of the 72% of people who have no idea what they would do if they inherit money, because they have someone to say, this is what we've been doing for the last 10 years. This is what we would continue to do now that, that ultimate client is a little younger. So this is what we would do for you. How much do you want to withdraw? What are your needs with the money? And that process becomes a lot easier when there's someone in place that understands what's going on with the money and is competent at managing it.
Yeah, I think that the biggest consideration when you're talking about inheritance is, at least I'm trying to think in my scenario, like whenever I have a son or a daughter, or maybe I don't, and I have a beneficiary I want to leave my money to, I want to ensure that good decisions are going to be made.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else. I mean, sure, maybe there's a scenario where you're like, yeah, whatever they want to do with it, let them do whatever they want with it. But you've built your whole life, or you've built this money over your life, and it's precious and it has potential to change generations of your family, right? So you want it to be taken care of, and you can, like Brandon said, I didn't even think about that. Part of our job is the transitional of the wealth. Obviously, we care about whose money it is, so we're going to be intentional about their wishes and how do we help guide the beneficiary, etc. And a lot of people think they're not going to leave anything to their kid. Like, I know I told you the average is $12,000, but every client that I work with, they're like, I'm scared I'm going to run out of money. It's very unlikely they're going to run out of money. It's more likely that they're going to leave money to somebody. And I mean, like the two client situations that we mentioned before, it was $1 million. So, I mean, what happens when you give a kid $1 million? Almost nothing good, right? You want to be on top of that. So speak with your advisor, have your beneficiary looped in with your advisor, and make sure you're looped in with your beneficiary. I know it's a little awkward, but those are the best things I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So now let's get a little bit more into the nitty gritty. So let's talk about the recipient of an inheritance. So if you're the person who got one and you haven't really been sure what to do, you expect to get one and you're not sure what to do, you want to make sure you're optimizing it and you do kind of know what to do, whatever. So on the recipient side, a couple tax things I'll talk about, and then I'll let James talk about kind of what the investment incentive becomes when you're a younger person inheriting. But number one, just right off the bat, there is a danger of being too scared to squander the money. So I just want to caution, when someone is 85 years old, they are going to be in very low risk investments almost always, because they could pass at any time. They could need the money for medical bills at any time. They don't want to be in stocks that fluctuate up and down more than 3 to 5% at the most. So they want to be in very low risk investments. Someone who's inheriting that money between 30 and 40 or even younger has significantly more time to build that money, which means your risk tolerance can be a little higher. If you inherit $300,000 and you're so scared to lose, the thing your dad built, the wealth your grandpa created. He was he immigrated to America, or he was the first one to come to college, worked their entire life to make 50 grand. And you just put it in CDs and then you retire and it's 55 grand. Well, they pass 50 grand to you. So at time value of money, if you've got 30 years, that could be $500,000 that they left you, but you're too scared to lose it. And so you have this mindset of, well, I just need to store this money. All of our episodes to date, when we've talked about time value of money, we have only ever talked about the time value of money within your lifetime. We've never extrapolated that concept among generations. So go back to the time value of money episode where we talk about, if you start when you're, I want to say it was 15, it might have been 20, to have $1 million, you need to start with like $12,500. Well, now extrapolate to, how much do you need if it's your grandpa who started with the money? Well, if he had just $12,000 at 18, that means it's $1 million when he's 60. But then when he passes and he's 80, it goes to your mom when she's 60. She lives to 87, passes to you when you're 50. Now the time value calculation is 90 years instead of 50. That's $10 million, $15 million. The math becomes exponential. So in this episode, as we're talking about inheritances, the ability to grow wealth is so incredibly potent.
90 years. If you have $12,000 at 11%, which is the market,
okay,
how much money do you think it is?
Ooh.
You're gonna be wrong. You're gonna Dr. Evil this.
17 million.
144 million.
144 million.
12,000 starting, 11% interest rate, 90 years.
So 90 years is a long time, but that's pretty typical.
3 generations,
from generation 1 between 20 and 25 to the 3rd generation retiring, right? That's a pretty standard timeline. $12,000 creates over $100 million. So the sad reality is, and this is going to oversimplify it here, and obviously some people are going to say, well, you don't understand, I had all these things I had to pay for. Of course, but at a simple perspective, every family, if the bloodline continues, should have 8 figures of family wealth within 5 generations, because that's 3 generations. 5 generations, what do you need to start with to have 15 million? $3,000 less. So it takes so little money to grow wealth if it's generational. But what we find is within 1 year to 18 months, over half of all the inheritances are completely gone. And the rest of them are not spent very well often.
Have I told you, I think we've talked about this, but the shirt sleeves in 3 generations, that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's literally what this is. So there's the saying, shirt sleeves, which is just a, I guess if you had short shirt sleeves, you were poor back in the day. So the saying was, if you have short sleeves, you work really hard to have long sleeves. And then in 3 generations, you're right back to your kids or grandkids right back to short sleeves. Because they spend like exactly what Brandon's saying. They're spending all the money.
Yeah. So cool. So that's kind of the big picture thing here is don't be too scared of squandering that you refuse to grow wealth generationally. But if you're in that perspective, you're better off. You're in a better mindset than the person who spends the entire inheritance. But just understand that you can be so cautious that you can really miss out an opportunity to exponentially grow what your family has worked hard to leave you. Yeah. So let's talk tax a little bit in terms of some specifics here. So if you're the inheritor of wealth, most assets receive what is referred to as a step up in basis when the decedent passes away. So when your grandfather, parents, whatever, pass away and leave you money, things like stocks and real estate, they now for you have a value, so to speak, to use simple terms, equal to what they were worth when the person died. Here's why that matters. If my parents bought a house in the 70s for $60,000 and it's now $900,000, if they sell that, that's a $840,000 capital gain, right? They're going to pay long-term capital gains tax. They're going to be in that 15 to 20% range on some of the income. They're going to pay a couple $100,000. If they never sell that house, they die, leave me the house, my basis is now $900,000. So if I sell the house in 5 years for $1 million, my capital gain isn't $940,000. My capital gain is $100,000 because the basis to me becomes the value at the date of death. And it works the same for stock. You've got that person who worked at Apple for the last 40 years and has had stock options when they were literally single digits. And now Apple is, what's the value of Apple stock roughly?
Oh, $170.
So definitely a 3-figure stock. So the capital gain could be
225. Sorry,
225. So capital gain could be 98% when you sell that stock. But if they leave it to you, your basis is now the 225 number. So that means a couple things. One, it means we're flipping sides a little bit here, but just understand if you are the person, you're going to be the decedent, you're the person who is planning to leave behind inheritance, you're the older person in this scenario, just know there's a lot of things that are better off with you dying with accumulated unearned gains than liquidating everything right before death, paying a bunch in taxes, and then leaving cash behind. So understand that, and there's different ways you can plan around and avoid that problem with trust planning and stuff like that. So talk to professionals, but just understand there are a lot of ways in which just leaving behind appreciated assets is way better than paying taxes on them and then leaving behind less money, because oftentimes your inheritors don't ever have to pay taxes if the gain that has accumulated dies with you. I know for sure that's true in stocks and real estate, and there's other things that work that same way. This also means, and this is kind of a hard thing to manage because there's a lot of non-financial components to someone you love passing away, but quickly after an inheritance is the best time to make a choice. So if you inherit property you don't want, when you inherit it, the basis is equal to the value you're pretty much going to get for it. So almost any asset inherited will have a $0 gain if sold. Let's just say, obviously this would be insane, but the day after, someone dies. So my parents give me a house the day after I sell. There's been no change in value. It's worth what it was worth a day ago. So my capital gain
a day after they die.
A day after they die.
A day after
right.
they die. Okay.
So when they die, my basis is now the value in the house. A day later, what's the value of the house? The same. It's been a day. So there's no capital gain there. So now just extrapolate that to normal situations. It means waiting around 2 years to decide, I don't know what I want to do with this home or these stocks I inherited. If you can make a decision, and part of that is having a financial advisor or a financial professional that you trust that can advise you on this quickly because you already have that relationship, but just understand tax-wise, because of this step up in basis principle, it is often best to make decisions to sell assets, if you're going to sell them, basically as soon after as humanly possible without seeming like a bad person that doesn't care. But like obviously everything non-financial, take care of, mourn, do the funeral, take time to yourself, console family, all of that's more important. But then when it comes time to make financial decisions, is expeditiously as you can do them, the better you'll be off tax-wise, because there hasn't been an accumulated gain since inheriting, and therefore you can pretty much sell those assets with no tax considerations at all, and now you have all of that money free to invest however you want.
And you get the loss still, right? The pass-through if something goes down.
I believe the step up in basis works both ways.
Okay.
So if something has gone down in value since purchased, it would also step down in basis. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked up by asset class kind of what has a step down in basis principle, but my understanding is most assets have a basis becomes fair market value upon death of the inheritee.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Mm-hmm. So again, there's lots of other considerations, but it is a really important situation to understand, especially if you have a family member who is open and does talk to you about this type of thing, and they have open communication. Maybe they're sick, it's coming, and they've already been talking to you. Just understand that if you have a plan in motion, oftentimes the sooner you can execute that plan and do what they want you to do or what you want to do based on those conversations, it can often be a better situation and avoid taxes by doing things quickly. So let's talk about the long-term just investing kind of strategy. So for someone inheriting money, it's obviously going to depend on their situation, but kind of what are the first questions, I guess? Let me ask it this way. What are kind of the principal questions you ask an inheritor to determine kind of what their strategy should be? And what's often your advice generally for people who receive an inheritance in terms of investing?
Yeah, the first thing I want to know is how they invest their current money. So that's going to give me a really good idea of how they're going to handle this gift that was just laid upon them. A majority of people, I'm actually thinking now, a lot of our clients, some of their money that was inheritance, now that I think about it. So I have a really good anecdotal understanding of this, but for one guy in particular, he was my very first inheritance client. I can think of the exact moment we were walking around the Times Square. He wanted to meet at a coffee shop. I was 26 years old and he was 71. And he inherited money 20 years ago, $200,000. Guess how much money he had when we met?
Did he invest it?
Not at all.
So it's about $200,000?
$200,000. And I did the math.
It'd be about $800,000 if he had invested it.
No, if he put it in the market, it'd be $2.5 million right now.
Yeah. Oh, right now,
right now, yeah. The first thing I did was I said, well, why are you so scared, right? Like when he's like, well, I'm a teacher and like I teach music, and it's like, okay, so you're just like a simple, I want to teach, I want to go home, I don't have, he doesn't have, how does he get excited when he thinks about money? He wasn't at all, right? He was fine keeping that in the bank. Mm-hmm. And I was asking him, I was like, how many, like, is the bank calling you to invest this? And he's like, oh, they call me every month. Like, and so for 20 years, he was saying no to the bank about investing this money. It was just sitting in cash, which is obviously, it's heartbreaking. But we were able to get him a client, get him as a client, get him going good. But the first thing is how do you handle your current money, right? And then that's going to give me a good idea of how I need to approach a portfolio for you. With this guy, all we did was I said, look, I think you need to be at, like, he had a pension, didn't need any income. This was strictly going to be like what he leaves his kids. Good health, all these things. I was like, look, I think we should go 50-50. I think we go 50% dividends and then 50% aggressive, like growth fund, VUG. And he's like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I talked him into it. And now he's got like $350,000. And it's been 4 years.
Yeah.
Right? So he's got whatever that is, a 75% increase in 3 years on what he waited 20 years for. So first thing is behavior. And then I'm going to design, any good advisor would design it based upon I don't want to say risk tolerance in this situation, because risk tolerance doesn't really have a factor in the sense that this isn't really your retirement. It's something kind of separate, risk tolerance isn't as important as how do you want this money to behave. So it's your behavior with your current finances. How are you going to react to how things are invested? And are you going to touch the money? Those are the three most important things to me.
Yeah. So in terms of investing strategy, I'll use a hypothetical scenario. And we've had client meetings exactly like this, where when you ask those questions, the answer is, I have no idea. I've never invested before. I have no idea what my risk tolerance. I don't know what I want to do with the money. I do not know this world at all. I trust your advice. Mm-hmm. So when you get a client like that, they inherit $500,000. They're between 30 and 40.
Okay. And
they're a blank slate. They just want to know, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Generally, how do you approach that? And what is your general advice to people in that boat?
Okay, so I need a little bit more. How much is the inheritance?
$500,000.
Okay, and are they stable with their job?
Stable job, but they have no real assets built on their own. So This is the first time they've had money, first time they've ever invested.
So what they're earning, they're spending.
Yep.
Okay.
Currently,
I would tell them, I said, look, this is going to be, if you continue, say you take the 10%, right? So then there's, what is that? There's $450,000. So take your $50,000, go to Europe, Greece, wherever you want.
I'd recommend Japan, but that's fine.
Go to Japan, whatever. And you have $450,000. I would look them dead in the eye and be like, you could be a multimillionaire and never have, like, you don't need, I would say this, but I would encourage them to save for retirement. But I'd be like, you don't need to, like, worry about retirement anymore. It's like, you have $450,000 in your 30s. Okay, by the time you're 60, 65, you should have millions of dollars in this account. We can help you do that. I would tell you we should view this like a 6 out of 10 risk. That's really what I would say. We'll go 6 out of 10 for a year. Every year we're going to reevaluate this. If you're like, I feel risky. I don't, it's $1 million now. I don't want to risk it anymore. Then we change things. It's a very fluid, ongoing thing. But I would say in that exact scenario, look, don't worry about anything. Keep living your life like you're going to. Have $50,000 to play with and give it a year, 2, 3. See how you react to the market, right? The market playing with your money. And then that's going to give me a really good idea of like, hey, maybe this person does want to go into Kava, $10,000, $20,000. Or maybe they want to be all in bonds and treasuries. And it's such a fluid relationship. But like just that conversation you and I had, if you don't know how to invest, like the hypothetical situation, I mean, that right there, if you're like, oh, I don't know how to invest, that took us 90 seconds to go over that, right? So when you speak with somebody, hopefully that eases your fear of stuff. There's nothing to be scared of. The most important thing you can have is patience, which patience is really easy when you have time.
Yeah. So a lot of people's concern, and part of these studies and statistics that I read a little bit earlier in the episode, are people have had advisors lose their money before, right? And so now they get an inheritance. They're way more guards up, walls up, because they can't afford for that to happen again. This is their mom's money. This is their dad's money, right? That they worked hard for. So how do you, if someone's just a listener, they've never talked to an advisor, they have no idea this world, they don't have a single dollar in any retirement account, they've never done this inheritance is the first time they've ever had money. How do they go about finding a good person and coming up with a good plan? Other than calling our phone, but other than that.
Calling 77 Financial Group. The number one thing I would say for that is word of mouth. So you need people you currently trust that have already built trust before they knew you had money. If you go into a financial advisor and you're just like, I have $1 million, I don't know what to do, help me, they're going to be like, oh, baby, I can't wait. So I would tell you to keep that close to the chest. Okay. Any financial advisor that sits down with you and they're like, all right, how much do you have? That's dictating the conversation. Now it's what your value is to them, when really you're there to see if they're valuable to you. Okay. So keep that close to the chest. Don't talk about that stuff. You want to know how they work. What's their philosophy? Really go in there like you have something of value, instead of like, I need their help. That's probably the biggest issue I see with people today is there's two types of people. Mainly it's the physicians I work with, but they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. I know everything. And then come to find out they've been married 7 times and they could have had $20 million, but now they have 2. So they just didn't speak with an advisor soon enough. There's that type of person. And then there's the other side of it where they're like, okay, I have $300,000. I'm 28 and I don't know what to do with it. And in my head, I'm like, if you would have went to anybody else, like they would have just eaten you up and chewed you out. So 1, keep your amount of money quiet until you trust the person. 2, speak with people that you trust now. Who do they use? And then interview more than 2 people. Like I would say interview more than 1, but you should interview more than 2.
Yeah, 3 to 4 at least. Talk to 3 or 4 different advisors and kind of see.
Yeah.
A couple questions you can ask just to, and again, we have an entire episode on how to choose a good advisor. So if you get an inheritance, that's a great 30 minutes of your time to hopefully not be irresponsible with potentially millions of dollars. So worth your time. Here's a very short list of a couple things that can be helpful while you're interviewing people. James's advice is very good. Don't lead with how much you have. Say, I'm expecting a moderate inheritance and I'm interviewing advisors, and don't give any numbers. So are you a fiduciary? Also specifically ask, as James often points out, not just that, but are you a fiduciary or do you just sometimes work in a fiduciary capacity? There are advisors who can, if they're managing an asset account through AUM, they have to be a fiduciary, but they can sell you products and not act as a fiduciary. So are you registered as a fiduciary? Are you a fiduciary? Do you sell any commissionable products, or do you just take an AUM fee, or do you just wealth manage? Who manages the assets? Will you be physically trading inside my account, or do you have a TAMP or some other third party that's actually managing the assets? Is there anybody involved else that's paid? Can you please walk me through everybody who's paid in the process of working with you and how much they charge in that step of the process? Because we've talked about this before. There can be where there's a third party charging fees. The third party is putting you in funds that have fees to be in the funds. Your advisor is charging fees, and ultimately you're charging 2%, where you could be at 1% or lower, depending on how much assets you have, working with an RIA who just wealth manages themselves independently. So that's a short list of some things that can help you get a perspective of how that advisor operates as a business. And then, I mean, other than that, you've got to talk to multiple people and see, obviously, if you have someone who's like, I have worked with this advisor for 30 years, I can show you my statements. They're awesome. I've consistently at or beating the market. They're communicative. They're awesome. Start there. It's never a bad idea to get a referral in this industry, similar to most people get a doctor referral or a chiropractor referral or a dentist referral. Great to get a referral, but don't only talk to one person who's referred. And let me add this too, and we've dealt with people who are reluctant to give up money for clients that want to work with us, who have seen bad performance and they do not want to relinquish that money. So you are not obligated to use the advisor of the person who passed away.
Good point. Yeah.
There's a lot of people who they die old and they have old advisors who are functionally retired. They're kind of doing it as a favor, or they haven't changed the way they've done things in 40 years and they're still in CDs. They've never really learned how to use any sort of platforms. They don't really send you statements. They can't really justify how your thing's doing because they don't know how to even get into that data. There's people who they're not up to speed, and your dad's used them for 40 years. That doesn't mean they're a good advisor for you. Do not let guilt or obligation feel like you're stuck. It's your money. When you inherit it, you can immediately call and get a new advisor on the account, or just say, I don't want an advisor. I'd like to pull my money out. I'm considering my options, and just terminate the relationship and then interview advisors and find a good fit for you.
I'm having some, not deja vu, but where something brings up another memory. I'm thinking back to my second week on the job at the best job I've ever had. It was in Scottsdale. I was a very green advisor. They sort of just threw me to the weeds, but our assistant wasn't there, and so
I think they throw you to the wolves, or you're in the weeds.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you're throwing people in weeds.
They were throwing wolves at me in the weeds.
There you go. Yeah.
But our front office lady wasn't there that day, so I'm the lowest person on the totem pole. I'm picking up the phone, and there's this, I pick up the phone. Hi, this is so-and-so company. I'm James. How can I help you? Yeah, I'm so-and-so, just like a real timid voice. My parents just died, and I'm looking to interview advisors. And I look back now, I'm having like this, I cannot believe you squandered that opportunity as a business person. But now I'm also looking back and like, wow, I had the wherewithal to tell that person what I actually thought. But he called and he's like, I have $3 million. And I told him, as if might have been 25 years old, 24 years old. I said, you don't lead with that. I was like, you can't just lead with that. That's a lot of money. When you interview these advisors, I would keep this close to the chest. And he's like, oh, well, like, what's your situation? And I'm like, I'm a brand new advisor. I was like, you don't want to work with me. You want to go, like, I'll recommend somebody for you, because he went to ASU. And I was like, you should get someone who's really close to you. That's a lot of money. I just tried to give him the best advice that I could. And looking back, $3 million back then is probably 6 or 7 now. So the way I would have invested it. So
you blew it for both of us.
I blew it for both. That was an excellent client. And a guy, I remember, he called back and he's like, hey, I found an advisor. I just want to say thanks. So he literally did the advice and found a good advisor. And I wish more people would do that. Now, he had $3 million. He was a little bit more careful. But if you have $100,000, 80, whatever the amount of money is, assuming it's not, money you just put in your bank and it doesn't make a difference in your life. If it makes a difference in your life, it's important. That's what I would say. So
I would say too, that's the lot, and we're getting close to an hour here, so we'll cut it out soon.
Yeah,
but
boy.
What I would say too is, if you go into a meeting being transparent, that don't disclose how much you have and just say you're interviewing advisors, good advisors should perk up and be excited about that. If you get a lot of resistance and defensiveness, massive red flag. So if the response to that is, listen, you're going to talk to these guys and they're going to try to swindle you out of this, and this is what we do. This is what you don't want to have these guys putting your money in the market, and look, just put this in this thing, or we'll put you in whole life, or we'll do an annuity or whatever.
Alert.
Immediate. Gosh darn it. Immediate red flag. So we've had those exact meetings where someone sits down, this is my situation, I'm interviewing advisors. We love hearing that. Great. Glad to hear it. Most people don't do that. Let me ask you, what are kind of the questions you're asking advisors? I would add these questions to the list. This is going to give you a good idea of how people operate. I would ask these questions as well. This is what we do. We hope we're a good fit. Best of luck. If you ask another person a question, you're not sure about their answer, we're happy to help you vet that answer if you want. You can follow up with us. If we can help, great. If not, we hope you find a right fit. You'll never get a defensive answer from a good advisor. It'll be, hey, here's what we do. Hopefully you're a good fit. Usually aggressiveness or defensiveness either means that they are predatory and don't want you to see the options out there because they're trying to lock you into, they're an insurance person. They can only offer insurance products, so they don't want you to see the options available to you. Or there's someone who's very desperate, I want to say. So you're someone where they're only managing $3 million. They're brand new. You have $2 million. You would double their practice. So there's a tension and like an almost aggressiveness there because you want to work with someone who knows what they're doing, that like James and I aren't going to not pay bills because you don't work with us. Like obviously a client with millions of dollars is great for us. We'd love to work with you.
We're speaking from personal experience, by the way, being aggressive with people who are like, okay, we need these people.
I know when I first started my tax practice, like if someone says no, you immediately want to be like, well, I'll charge less.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I say 800? I meant 400. Like, because you're desperate. So, now looking back, like, I hopefully made up for any experience with customer service and I tried to do a really good job. But there's obviously things that I didn't know back then. And if you were a super complex tax client, back then I was not a good CPA for you just starting out. So you don't want to take millions of dollars to an advisor who like they don't really know what they're doing, but they will say anything to land you because that you would completely change the structure of their practice. So that's kind of the other thing I would say is just go in, interview advisors, and be transparent about the fact that you're interviewing advisors. And I think the response to that framing of the meeting will also tell you a lot about the character and kind of the structure of how that advisor operates.
I love it. This is why I work with Brandon, because he speaks better than I do.
But James is a lot better with the money, so you can call me up anytime. But you don't want me managing your money. All right, guys. Well, that's another episode of 15 Minutes of Finance, 2 Gents, 2 Cents. We hope you learned a lot. Again, we talked in this episode about kind of what the purpose of this whole thing is, and we've talked about it before. We want to have advice for everybody in every situation. So this is one. Store it, save it, send it to your friends. Every single person listening to this knows somebody who has an inheritance, knows someone who has been talking about how to leave behind stuff. I don't know what to do. I think my dad, like, he's sick. I don't know what to do with the house. Like, anybody who's wrestling with that, send in the episode. Hopefully it gives them some sort of concept of what's the mentality of inheritor, what are the strategies of inheritor, what are some of the considerations of an inheritor, and hopefully it helps in that regard. So please feel free to share the episode. Hopefully you learned something. And as always, comment on the episodes or send us a message. Any questions you want us to answer or topics you'd like to hear covered in the future. We'd love to talk about what you want to hear about. So that's why we do it. We'll see you next time. And as always, invest early,
invest often.